Okay, welcome back. We're on chapter 47, page 873 on ethics. And you might start off thinking, oh, how does that really affect me? Well, trust me. Here's a scenario. So the vice president is broke his leg in a skiing accident and he's stuck in Vail in a hospital. And so somebody comes to you and says, I need to be able to see that price proposal that the customer sent. Could you get into the vice president's email and pull me out this one thing? Ooh. Wow. Yeah. You're going to have to deal with ethical issues. Yeah, big time. Okay. So let's talk at the very, very beginning. Ethics is, the principles of conduct. Basically the rules of being a good human. And morals are the proclamation of what is good. Now, where someone says this is good and that is bad. And it's kind of a group think kind of a thing. It's kind of a consensus. Everyone thinks that murder is bad. Okay? So therefore murder is bad because we all think it is. Okay. So informed consent, this is a cool term, a legal term. Basically talks about you've been informed of the risk. Like, for example, I'm getting ready to buy some stock. And the guy says, oh man, it's slam dunk. You're going to make millions. And doesn't say, but maybe not. The informed consent talks about the risk. And you have to have the consent to whatever you're getting ready to do. For example, I'm getting ready to update a server and I need to be able to tell them, okay, yes, there's a risk and here's what it is and here's how we're mitigating it. And I need your consent to be able to take this on. So the problem is upper management might have zero skills in this area. You're asking them for permission to upgrade a server, but they don't have a clue what that means. So the informed consent is a way to protect your backside. You could put it down in writing and saying, yes, there is a risk that something might fail, and if so, here's what we're going to do. That way they can't yell at you afterwards and go, well, but you go, yeah. Okay. So there's the right reminder at the right time, a shaded area on page 874. Respect the privacy of others and basically think before you type. Before you do something, think about it. It's kind of simple. Code of ethics. So there's the system administrator code of ethics. It's not really a set of laws. It's more about just how you would go about doing things. A system administrator code of ethics. Cool. So customer usage guidelines, page 874. Typically you would sign either an acceptable use policy, there's an acronym, an AUP, or a code of conduct, UCC. So basically we're talking about the things that are allowed in the company. So what is allowed is occasional phone calls, right? You can make private phone calls to your house, right? Or your kid or whatever, right? But you can't run a business where people are using that number to conduct business. Make sense? Okay. Streaming videos. Can I stream videos like during lunch or something? Or is something I need to learn? Yeah, most likely they're allowed that as long as it doesn't, totally consume their bandwidth. And I had a story where there was a bunch of folks that wanted to watch this one particular TV show on their computers. And yeah, it brought the network down to its knees and we had to do something. Obviously, no outside business on the phone or the internet. I mean, you can't use the company's internet or the company's phone to conduct business, right? Okay. Copy machines. If I wanted to make a yard sale flyer, I want to make 12 copies, or a missing cat. I want to make 12 copies on their copy machine. Would the company really be excited about that? Not really, because the cost is minimal. The cost per page, unless you're doing color, is dirt cheap. No one's really going to care. Now, if you came in here and said, I make 100 copies of my novel, well, no, they would probably not like that. And it should be fairly obvious that almost all companies are going to have a thing on, porn and illegal activities. You can't do gambling, or you can't use your connection to scam people. So they talk about, instead of starting from scratch, find one of those guys, find an acceptable use policy and just adopt and edit it. On page 877, they talk about privileged access code of conduct. So we talked about the normal code of conduct for people, but here are the administrators, the people who have elevated permissions. I like this little bullet list. It says, it comes with responsibilities. When I give you administrator rights, you have some responsibilities now. Okay. And obviously, it's necessary to do work-related things. I don't give you permission to do everything. I give you permission to do the things that are associated with work. And you're trying to minimize the damage due to mistakes. That makes sense. There's a disclosure risk. Yes, things could go south. There's a low risk of punishment if you have an honest mistake. So that's basically it. Now, if you did something deliberate, well, obviously, we'll throw you to the wall. But there's low risk if you just made an honest mistake. And yes, there are penalties for violation. If you go into someone's email and or dig into their HR files to find their home address so you can stalk them, oh boy, yeah, you're definitely going to be fired. You typically sign something, some sort of a document, and the management really should maintain a list of all the people they've given these responsibilities to, wouldn't you think? Yeah. And on page 878, they talk about guidance for junior system administrators. Be careful because you can do an awful lot of damage, right? Think before you act. Respect privacy. Don't look at things that you wouldn't want other people looking at if it was you, right? So don't go poke around HR files. Don't go poke around, home addresses and phone numbers, right? And then if a mistake happens, which obviously it will, fess up early. Don't go hide, okay? You're a junior guy. It's okay for you to make mistakes. Copyright adherence. So, if you pirate a copy of, Microsoft Word or whatever at home, they're probably not going to come after you. I mean, they might fuss. But when corporations do piracy, and they start copying, I have 15 copies of AutoCAD, but I have it installed on 50 workstations, and hopefully it won't get caught. Yeah. Companies will come after you for that. So there's financial implications and publicity kind of a thing. Look, you guys are scumbags. You copied all this stuff. So software could be licensed for individual PCs. That's one way. Or it could be licensed to the company. It could be what's called a concurrent license, which means you can install it on as many machines as you want, but only 50 people can be using it at one time. That works. Again, I'm using AutoCAD as an example. Sure, go ahead and install it on as many machines as you want, but we don't have that many engineers, and the likelihood of having 50 people on using it at the same time is pretty slim. And so we pay per seat. Free and open source, software, FOSS, could sound great. I mean, it does. But, to tell you the truth, it ought to be something that is so prevalent, not some niche product that no one uses. It ought to be mainstream FOSS that you use. And that way, you ban users from installing any software, and you would do the installation. You, the administrator, would do that. I like this thing on page 879. If I'm going to be looking at sensitive data, for example, I'm going to be poking around the CEO's email, I want a witness there. I want somebody standing next to me. So there's two people that are going through the CEO's email and filling out, finding that one email that the person needed. I don't want to do this alone, okay? Very, very good advice. Very good advice. Working with law enforcement on page 881. Now, this is kind of a tricky thing. Sometimes you want to get law enforcement involved in something, but you have to understand how things happen. When you do that, you kind of lose control. This is kind of a stupid example, but let's say somebody was murdered in the server room, okay? And they put, tape across the door saying, "Do not enter." Well, now you're kind of screwed, right? I mean, yes, there's a dead system administrator on the floor, and that's terrible, but that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about I can't get to my servers anymore because because I've lost control of the crime scene. Okay, all right, here goes. So typically, you aren't the one who dialed the police. Management somewhere. Most likely, if you have legal counsel, that department or something similar to that. Whoever does policy, maybe in HR, they're the ones that are going to be calling the police. And then the police could be contacting the company saying, "Hey, we see something weird." So either, it's all about the company, not you. You don't dial the number. Okay. And so you need to be able to push back a little on the police to make sure you're not disclosing any privacy information. Okay, so there's a bullet list on page 882 2, talking about be calm. Don't go, but this happened. Be courteous to them, right? Refer to management on anything that you don't feel comfortable with answering. Like, well, let me talk to legal. Contact the legal department, right? If you're being interviewed for something, the crime that occurred, well, yeah. And you don't give the evidence directly to the police normally. You would pass it through legal, and legal would be the one, if you have a legal department. They'll be the ones that are giving it to the police. And keep a log of whatever you said or whatever you did or whatever you gave them, okay? Because you want to be able to come back and say, but wait, what happened to that thumb drive I gave you on Tuesday? And you don't want them to go, thumb drive? What thumb drive? You go, no, wait a minute now. I have a list. And the other thing is, this sounds like James Bond kind of stuff, but you need to verify that they really are the police that show up. I mean, that sounds kind of silly. But yeah, you need to verify who they are. And beware of social engineering attempts that might try something like that. I mean, yes, the police show up and say, hey, we're from special such and such and such and such section of the police, and we're here to look at your data. You need to be able to say, wait a minute, show me. Setting expectations on privacy and monitoring, 883. You could have, some companies have a chief privacy officer. That's kind of cool. Employees typically sign something that gives consent. I know, for example, in the Army, there is no expectation of privacy on email. It doesn't matter if you're sending your email from your Army email to your spouse. I'm sorry, there is no expectation of privacy whatsoever. You signed away that expectation. And so sometimes you have a thing for explicit. I accept consent, to monitoring. Can the company read your email? Maybe. Can they view what websites you're going to? Absolutely, and probably will. Probably are. And the next one talks about 887. This is a tough one. What happens when you're told to do something that you know is either illegal, immoral, or unethical? What you do is you tell them, I'm sorry, you're going to have to give this to me in writing. Yeah. And if you're not willing to do that, then I'm not willing to do whatever you're asking me to do. So check to see if there is a written policy that talks about whether or not this is good or not. If it's wrong, then politely reject the request if you can, and escalate it to higher management. Now, this is not exactly perfect, right? Because there will be some scenarios where the boss is going to say, yeah, but we're going to fire you. So if that doesn't work, if you have a legal department, you can go to them. But, escalate it up the chain is the only advice. Is that always going to work? No, that is not. And then on page 888, they talk about observing illegal activity. So insider trading, kiddie porn, those kind of things. But on the other hand, what if you had a whistleblower who was gathering information to out something? Yikes. Then yes, I do want them to go out and poke around and hunt for illegal things. Yeah, I would think so. Okay, so ethics, again, is a very complicated topic, and this is just a kind of a broad brush approach. But I hope you guys appreciated it, and we'll see you guys again in the next video.